Hello and welcome back to Suspended Fanimation. I'm your host, Dennis Patholkas, and this is Mr. Robot, Season 4, Episode 2, Payment Required. One of the things I forgot to mention last episode was actually, before I start here, let me get a little business out of the way first. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you don't like what you see, you can hit the dislike button. I just ask you down in the comment section, tell me what it is you didn't like about the show. Give me a little constructive criticism, some feedback. Also, if you want to know when I'm be on live again next, you can hit the bell down below. You can also go to my website, suspendedfanimation.com, and take a look at the schedule there. I change it every week, every Monday, pretty much. And it's also mirrored on my Facebook page as well. I have a group Facebook page, and you guys can come in there, post stuff, and talk amongst yourselves. I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, and I also have a Patreon page. I don't have any tiers set up as of yet. That will happen at the end of this year when there's stuff to actually, give you. Going back to what I was saying there, I forgot to mention in the first episode here that all these 400 numbers. So, the way TV numbers things for seasons, if it's season one and episode one, it's actually they number it as 101, 101. So for season four, it's season and episode one, it's season four or episode 401, which of course those of you that know computers, those are all error codes in the 400 set. So the entire episode's names this season are all going to be error codes. So 402 equals payment required. Of course, 401, last week's episode, unauthorized, is also an error code as well. So a nice little tidbit there, and a kind of a nice way to end things off. It's kind of funny. There's 13 episodes in this season. Actually, if they had 10 episodes, it would have gone with the perfect ending on that one, just the title. But because it's just gone, if I remember correctly. And that would have been a really nice ending, but that's not the way it's going out. So let me get started. I'm like I do, everything else. I'm going to start with the recap and then I'll go into the review for those of you who are just joining us. Hey, Jar, how's it going? And Joe Greer and Penn and whoever who was in earlier. All right. So we got Price talking about 1989 and the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the USSR and all of that, and how a young Zheng came together and put together Deus with a whole bunch of other people that are of nefarious intent. And basically they got in on oil, profiteering on war, making war, the military complex, all that kind of stuff. Everything that Dick Cheney was involved in, essentially. And White Rose basically suggested linking everyone together via the internet. And that would be a way of just to branch out from corporate espionage and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and I should have said too beforehand, spoiler alert, I am going to spoil everything in this episode. So if you haven't watched it, go back and watch it and come on back. This will be a video there. So thank you, Vacuum Bitch, for the battle. Of course, there is a spoiler alert right over my head here too. So there we go. I just kind of got excited. I really wanted to get into it. So White Rose suggested linking everyone together via the internet by getting everyone online with their accounts, everything essentially. And that's what he did. It was the biggest coup in human history, is what Price said. And E-Core was the front. And White Rose was positioning herself at the top of this. And basically, there was a pet project that she wanted to work. It was the Super Collider, cost $1 billion that she financed. Everyone had laughed about it. But by positioning herself at the top and being able to, she was able to build this thing under Washington, D.C. So that's where it is. And Price says it was kind of interesting how she maneuvered herself into that position, and now she's the one that's laughing. She's the one that's positioned with everything there in place, and no other person has that kind of access other than what she has. So we see Price is actually in all safe with Elliot and Mr. Robot, and he says, "You're lucky. I was the one that was notified when you got into the honey pot there." Otherwise, you would really be dead at this point. He goes, essentially, I'm supposed to notify Deus about anybody who enters that apartment. And of course, that didn't happen. And he goes, and that's why we saved your life. So Price also tells Elliot, you know what, your plan's not going to work. And Mr. Robot basically said, Mr. Robot chimes in and says, Price can get them in, since he knows, that Price is still the CEO for now, until, of course, he gets taken down, which is what's happening. And Price is like, the only person that basically they said they just need to get into White Rose's accounts and drain them. And Price is the only person who has, or the only contact that he has, is Susan Jacobs. Now, if you remember, Susan Jacobs is someone that Darlene knew. We'll get to that in a little bit. And she's the one that can get him around the authorization codes and all that kind of stuff to get into those accounts. But she disappeared months ago, and he has nobody else there, and he can't help Elliot. So Elliot says, I did a little digging into you too, and he knows that Angela was his daughter, and because he looked into him at this point. And Elliot says, he can find Susan Jacobs and get her to the place she needs to be in the next 8 days, because that's when White Rose's plans come into effect. And Price says, you know what? I can't help you. He goes, I just can't. There's nothing I can do now at this point. And he goes, well, Elliot basically says, well, are you just going to take it basically and be a dead man? You're going to be dead inside, kind of thing. Is that all you're going to do? You're just not, going to fight back against White Rose. And he says, the minute that I hooked up with White Rose, that's when I knew I was a dead man walking, and you are too. And he walks out. And so Elliot gets a call from Darlene telling him that mom is gone now at this point. She's dead. So Darlene and Elliot are at the care facility, and the woman in charge there is talking about how great their mom was, and how she gave him gave her a shoulder to cry on in her time of need and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, yeah, okay, great. So what do we do with all the boxes here? And they're like, oh well, normally everyone takes their family's affairs because for sentimental value. And she goes, nope, donate it all. And the woman's like, oh, well, we can't box the stuff up. And they're like, shit, all right, we got to box everything up. So they're sitting there boxing things up. Elliot just wants to get this shit over with. And he really doesn't want to be around Darlene. And Darlene's like, we're cool, right? I mean, after what happened, because I'm sorry what happened yesterday, but we're okay, right? And he's like, yeah, we're fine. Just hurry it up. And so Darlene is kind of going really slow, and she's looking through things. She grabs her mom's fur coat, and then she asks him, is it weird that I feel a little relieved about her being gone? And she goes, don't you? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever, kind of thing. And she's pretty pissed at him still at this point. So Elliot finds his old Walkman in her drawer, and she's like, well, what is she doing with that? And he goes, I don't know. And he throws it inside the box as well to get rid of it. And Darlene's like, no, fuck that. I want that. These things are hot now. And so she grabs it and throws it in her bag. And she finds out that their mom had a safe deposit box and wants to take a look inside, of course. So Dom is at her interview about Santiago's disappearance. And she's not doing too well. She's a little bit, fidgety, worried. And even Horton, the guy who's interviewing her, asks her if she's okay. She doesn't look all that well. She just needs some water. And then she blurts out that Santiago was a double agent. She feels he was a double agent. And then he says, well, she goes, I feel bad about talking about this because I'm worried about the repercussions and because of the people that he's working with. And he goes, well, who is he working with? Of course. And she says the Trejo drug cartel. Yeah. So Janice is in her taxidermist shop and working on an animal when she gets a call from Dom's, and she goes, well, how did it go? And Dom says, I think it went well. Did he buy it? She goes, yeah, I think so. She goes, do you think so? Or did he buy it? And she goes, I'm 99.9% sure that Horton bought it. And she goes, huh. Okay. And in the meantime, this woman comes to her taxidermy shop, and she's like, just a minute, I'm on the phone. And she goes, well, all right, that getting started here is a little bit rough, and I'll get back to you, kind of thing. And then she goes up to the woman, and the woman brings out her dead dog Beatrice and says that she wants Beatrice to be with her forever. Just pulls it out of her bag, and yeah, uh, it was kind of one of those weird Sam Esmail moments that he is so fond at doing. So Mr. Robot and Elliot are at the funeral parlor, and Mr. Robot is talking about he's talking about Elliot to us, and saying that, you know what, Elliot does this all the time, that he deflects when he actually should be thinking about what's been happening. And he starts talking to Elliot about this and says, you know what, you need to stop and take in that your mom's death before it eats away at you inside. He goes, I know you, because I've been watching you all this time. You got to remember this. And Elliot says, well, if you have been watching me all this time, you know that we've got time. We don't have any time. We need to get right, Rose, now, kind of thing. Time's ticking, man. We need to go. And he leaves. And Mr. Robot talks to us and says, yeah, I know that could have gone better. And fuck you. So he says, which I thought was kind of nice. Uh, yeah, when she wrote the name down, you knew it wasn't good. Exactly, Pen. That was back to Janice there in that one. So Darlene is trying to pick out a coffin. She goes, I don't know. I never talked to her about any of this. I don't know what her final wishes were, and all this stuff. And she's thinking that the guy behind the desk there is judging her, when really all it is a job to him, to tell you the truth. I've been on not his end, but on her end. And yes, this is pretty much the way it kind of goes, where they really don't care as long as you pick something and pay for it. That's really what it is. As shitty as that sounds. And what does Elliot do? He comes in and just says, you know what, whatever the cheapest thing is, to get her cheapest urn that you have, and cremate her, is what he says. And they leave. So they're at the subway station, and Darlene wants to know what's in the safe deposit box. She goes, you know what, I want to go there. And Elliot is like, yeah, I don't really care. And he's looking at his phone all this time, and she grabs his phone and goes, damn it, why don't you fucking listen to me? You've been on this phone all this time. He grabs the phone back because he's pissed at her. And she wants him to come with him to the bank because she's scared. And she goes, remember that time, all those times when you were younger, when you thought you were having one of your episodes, and you grabbed onto my hand because you wanted me to reassure you that it was real. And she goes, that's what I want with you. I want you to come with me at this point. So he's like, all right, we'll go to the bank. Well, if that's going to help you. And all this time, a guy in a snowman suit has been sitting next to them on the subway platform, and the train pulls up, and he gets up and looks at him and goes, condolences on your loss, and he leaves. So yeah. Dom, in the meantime, is in an interrogation room with another suspect here. It's a guy named Mr. McGuire. And Mr. McGuire has been taking career criminals and he's basically making them digitally disappear. Does that think you might see Mr. McGuire again with Dom? Quite possibly. I think that's what's going to happen here. And just as she's interrogating him with another agent, she gets a text from Janice telling her condolences about your coworker. And that's when another agent comes in and has Dom come out, and they're watching the news, and someone took a dive off a building. And it was because the name hasn't been released yet, but it was Horton actually committed suicide. And Janice texts her back and goes, you know what, 99.9% sure isn't 100% sure. Make sure next time that's what it is. Yeah. So yeah, kind of vicious on that one. So Darlene finds out that the safe deposit box has been emptied because her mother did not make any payments on it, even though the bank tried to get a hold of her and they couldn't. So as per policy, they cleaned out the box, they held it for 120 days, and they dumped everything that was inside. And Darlene, of course, is pissed. And this is where you get your 402 from payment required. That's your error message there. Darlene, of course, is pissed, and Elliot's like, "Well, we found out. We didn't find out what was in the box. Let's go," kind of thing. And she starts crying, and he goes, "There's nothing we can do about it. We couldn't find out what's in the box." She goes, "That's not what it's about." And she goes, "Don't you care about what happened to Angela?" And he says, "Yeah, of course I do." He goes, "I think about it all the time." And he goes, "Here, let me show you something." He pulls out the Walkman and he opens it up, and we see that it's a tape from when they were kids. And it's actually him, Angela, and Darlene recording a Mother's Day tape for their mom. And she goes, "Well, why did she have this? How did she get a hold of this kind of thing?" And she goes, "Well, maybe she was lonely." She goes, "Well, I want to listen to it." So she puts it in, and she listens to it and starts crying, of course, at this point. So Price goes over to White Rose's house during Christmas. White Rose is setting up this giant Christmas tree and tell him that he's resigning as CEO of Ecor at the end of the year. And which means, you know, that he's also going to be resigning from Deus as well. And White Rose, nope, that's unacceptable, is what he says, because we need to get the board of Deus together to vote on your successor. So you're stuck until you're out, kind of thing. And Price goes, "I don't give a shit." He goes, "I'm done at the end of the year." He goes, "Tell you what, that'll make a great New Year's Eve party to have Deus there and you can all vote. And that'll be a great start to the new year." That's what he says. And as he's leaving, White Rose tells him that's not how the game is played. And Price comes back and goes, "It's all a game to you." And he goes, "You won. Face it." And he walks out. And we see that White Rose is completely pissed off and just tears down the Christmas tree, screams and brings down the Christmas tree. So Elliot, in the meantime, is waiting to pick up his mother's ashes when Price calls him and tells him, he's played his hand, because, of course, this is all to get the Deus together so that Elliot has a chance of stopping White Rose and all that kind of stuff. And Darlene arrives with Mom's ashes just as he's on the phone. She goes, "Who is that?" He goes, "Oh, nobody." She goes, "I saw your phone both in the subway and earlier." And she goes, "Why are you hacking Susan Jacobs' eCoin account?" And she goes, "I know her, right?" And she goes, "And by the way, that last transaction at the animal shelter wasn't her, it was me." And he goes, "Oh," and he goes, "You broke into her house, didn't you?" She's like, "Yeah." And then he puts two and two together and goes, "What did you do to her?" And she goes, "Do you want me to say it out loud?" And he gets pissed off. She goes, "This is what I wanted to know." "I wanted to know if we were okay." And she goes, "I don't, especially with what I did." And he sits down. He is okay with her, but the situation has put him in now. And he tells her he needs everything that she knows on Susan Jacobs because she was working for the Dark Army and he's going after White Rose. And she's like, "That's suicide." And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "But she's going to find me anyway." So she goes, "Well, if she finds her, she finds you, she's going to find me too." He goes, "No, no, no, no." He goes, "I'm not putting you in that." She goes, "No, we're in this together." She grabs his phone and she links it and says, "You'll be able to track me any way you want to now. I've done this with," and she said somebody else's phone. And I missed who it was, who she said. So she's got someone else's phone linked as well. And she goes, "Remember, every single hack that you ever pulled off was due to F Society. Every successful hack was due to F Society. You need us." And she goes, I'm kind of surprised you said you're going after White Rose." She goes, "I thought you were going after Vera." And he's like, "What?" And she goes, "Yeah, Vera's back in town. And I kind of freaked out when I saw him." And she goes, "I told you earlier, but you really didn't care about it. You kind of just kind of spaced out on it." And Elliot looks at Mr. Robot, who's sitting there in the chapel, and Mr. Robot looks back at him, and Darlene gets in his view. She kind of moves over in front of his view and says, "Hey, um, basically, she has to go, but they're going to talk about this and they're going to get everything in order." And she leaves, and Elliot just blows up at Mr. Robot and says, "You know what? we're supposed to be honest with each other. We're supposed to tell us everything. You want to go back to being adversaries, all this kind of stuff. And Mr. Robot's like, hey, wait. I don't remember this. She didn't tell me. You mean she didn't tell you? And he goes, no, she didn't tell me. They're like, then who did she tell? And that's when we see this kid up in an office spinning in a chair. And remember, I said last week when Elliot, when he was dying and his personalities were there, it was his mom, it was him as a little boy, and it was Mr. Robot. And I said those were his three personalities that were in there. And we see a woman come in. It's not his mom, but she says, what are you doing here? And the kid's like, what do you mean? She goes, you're not supposed to be sitting in that chair. He's coming. And he goes, Mr. Robot? She says, no. Elliot? No. But he'll be here soon, so let's go. And she gets him up and hustles him out the door. And the door closes behind them. I don't know if this is supposed to be in their, in Elliot's mind, if this is another universe, what this is, but holy shit balls. That's all I can say. And that's where we leave off on the episode. And my God, this thing, it just goes gangbusters on that. So who do I think it is, Penn? I don't know. I'm wondering if it's us, because we keep getting Mr. Robot talking to us as another personality. We know we're one of the other personalities. So if that's the case, are we supposed to be the final say of what goes on with Mr. Robot? And then the other thing I started thinking about earlier today is, what if this is all a simulation? Since we're dealing a lot with computers and things like that, and simulations, what if all of this whole thing, since we're in an alternate 2015, what if this is all just a simulation of some sort? And that's how Mr. Robot has kind of bled over into Elliot's life, because he's supposed to be from another world, is what he has said. I let that sink in for a moment there. Yeah. And I really don't know where Sam Esmail is going with this. It's sci-fi at this point. It really is. It has been sci-fi since season 3. And it's some awesome stuff, man. I'm telling you. Sandrine Holt is another gem of an actress. Is that the one who played Susan Jacobs, Joe Greer, or are you talking about Janice? Yeah, or he could be in a loony bin in a straitjacket too, EJR. We don't know. We really don't. And I mean, and Vera adds another, wrinkle to everything too, because Vera is very fucking unstable. And he's in next week's episode, of course. And he wants to, have a partnership with Elliot. Oh, yeah. I think back at that first season, about what happened in that first season, and just, how far we've come at this point. And it's a completely different series than what we started off with in the first season. And I never would have seen this coming at all, not in a million years. Yeah, this is some good TV. This is some good writing. This is stuff that I'm hoping they get some awards for this season, at least, to make up for everything else they've done this, the previous years as well, because it deserves it. It really does. And if you haven't seen it, Vivek Patel linked to the episode. It's on USA Network. They just showed it. So they're going to show it again on the West Coast here at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. If you're on the East Coast, you can watch it on USA Network. So, or it could all be a dream, and you were there, Scarecrow, and yes, yeah, exactly. No, they didn't lose anything during the 2 years off, Penn. It just kind of bounced right back into things. And I can't believe how fast I kind of snapped into it as well. Snap back into it. Yes, 403 error code is forbidden. Yeah. Do you think? Yeah, he's Matthias. I believe it is. We've already seen he has three personalities. So when he was dying, the three personalities were watching over him. It was his mom. So it's actually five personalities that we know of. It's Elliot, of course, his mom, him as a little kid, Mr. Robot, and us. So those are the five right there. There's a sixth personality out there now that we don't know about. Or it could be us. I don't know. That's the whole wrinkle in all this. That's what's actually kind of interesting about it. And that's what I like about it because I don't know what's going to happen next. And that's actually what kind of pushes my buttons is when I don't know what's going to happen next, but it's still entertaining. It's not something that's going to be like, oh, that's stupid, that didn't make any sense, or they do something out of left field that really, I mean, like Lost kind of thing. No, it's not. They're not trapped in purgatory, but they really are because we didn't have anything better to come up with. Yeah. And that's what I'm liking about this show is it's so well done. It really is. I mean, this is the same thing. Counterpart had the exact same kind of writing, pacing, acting. I mean, you name it, it was there. And that's what's good about this. We need more stuff like this. And I'm okay with it ending in 4 seasons instead of 3, to tell you the truth. Or 5. I know originally he had it set for 5, but I'm okay with him ending it a season early. I think 5 would have been pushing it, to tell you the truth. Yeah. Counterpart did deserve more seasons. It deserved at least another season. One more season would have been awesome. And I think that would have really wrapped things up. Quite honestly, I don't know why things aren't just pitched as, 3-season arcs and say, hey, this is what we're going to do for these 3 seasons. We're not going to leave it open ended. When it's done, if you like the characters, we have another story. Move on to another story. Telenovelas had it right. That's all I can say. They really did. Where you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You're done. You can still use the same characters, move them into another story, is what you do. They're like volumes, kind of like, books, those things that have words in them and sometimes some pictures too. Yeah. Comics also do this kind of stuff as well. It's called serializing. I know it's kind of a wacky idea, but hey, who knew? So where do we go from here? I mean, we've got 8 days, we know, until the shipment reaches the Congo and, goes to, and White Rose's plans are getting put into fruition, if you will. Is White Rose going to use the collider? We don't know. What does the collider do at this point? We don't know for sure. What is Elliot's plans now that Susan Jacobs is dead? Is he going to have enough information to hack into the bank to get White Rose's money? And is that going to stop White Rose? Because as Philip said, she's got contingency plans. Yeah. What is this thing you mentioned called comics? It's a new thing, Ejar. It should be catching on fairly soon, though. All the kids are talking about it. And yeah, I mean, now Angela's bringing the band back together again, too. She's pulling back F Society. They really are. That's what she's doing. I mean, she's going to pull back as many people as possible that are still alive for F Society to go up against the Dark Army. So now it's going to be F Society versus the Dark Army. Is what it's going to be, which is really White Rose. White Rose's, enforcement arm, and Deus's enforcement arm as well. Yeah. Next, you'll be making wild predictions about moving pictures. That's just crazy talk, Ejar. Isn't everyone from F Society dead? We don't know for sure, Penn. Um, Remember the last two that were working at a Fry's out in Arizona or something like that? I don't think that they're dead. I think McGuire might have something to do with them disappearing. I think that's the reason why we got introduced to McGuire. That's why I said, remember McGuire, because he's going to come into it at some point in time. They made a point of having a scene with McGuire and giving him a little bit of personality. Usually you don't do that unless he's integral to some of the plot. Yeah. I do pick up on these things every now and then. I thought everyone was killed. By the way, have you been to a Fry's? No, I haven't. Actually, Ejar, I take that back. I have been to the one. So the one near me here in San Diego is, I mean, they're all dismal. They're going under. They're all going under. We know this. And I'm pretty sure they're just going to live online as an online entity. What I find funny is that they're on Facebook now and they're trying to they're doing every Friday like a podcast kind of thing or a vidcast kind of thing, and it's kind of sad, but at the same time, I it's a little too little, too late. Yeah, three of the local ones are bowling alleys. Wow. Yeah, that's actually where I bought my TV. That's how I got it so damn cheap. It was like almost half off, quite honestly, and it was a brand new TV. Yeah, it was kind of scary. Yeah. That's why I did it, because I mean, honestly, I wasn't gonna buy it. I was just there. What is Fry's? So Fry's Pen is an electronics store. So Fry's Electronics, and I don't work for them, and yeah, I've given them a free plug at this point. It was kind of like, have you ever heard of Micro Center in a way? So Micro Center is the only thing that's closest to it. It's where you could buy computer parts, TVs, microphones, anything electronic you could buy, as well as DVDs, um, all kinds of stuff. It was a huge store and it had everything in it. I mean, you could buy appliances as well, and it was cheap. I mean, they used to match Amazon, or they still do. They match Amazon's prices, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, kind of like a Best Buy, but kind of like Best Buy and Amazon had a baby, and it was an immoral baby kind of thing. That's kind of what Fry's is, and they're all branded. They all have their own kind of theme to them. The one in San Marcos was supposed to be like an Atlantis theme. This one here in San Diego, I think, is supposed to be a flea market theme. No, it was supposed to be a military tech theme, but they never quite got it down to it. The original one that I went to up in Palo Alto was a Western theme. The one in Sunnyvale, if I remember correctly, was sci-fi. And so they had all kinds of stuff inside the store that looked like sci-fi. The one in Sunnyvale actually had a UFO that had crashed into the roof and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, the one out in Las Vegas didn't have a theme to it. That was kind of the weird one. But that was the one the guy had gotten caught for embezzling money from them, and yeah, he had built a store out in Las Vegas so he could justify his gambling. He could justify his trips out to Las Vegas, where he was really gambling the money that he was embezzling from the company. There you go. So yeah. Yeah, it's a very odd gimmick. Yeah, if you look up Fry's Electronics online, Pen, you'll see they're still there. I mean, they're still online. They have some really good deals. That's usually where I send people to go and get electronic stuff, like TVs and computers and things like that. And I mean, just really wacky deals. So, Woodland Hills is Alice in Wonderland. Burbank, The Day the Earth Stood Still. South Bay is the Amazon forest. Yeah, like I said, all kinds of weird shit that they do. Yeah, I don't know why they did it that way. They just did. But yeah. Anyway, I digress. Um, that's where those guys were working at. It was I thought it was kind of funny that they were in Arizona doing that. But I'm fairly sure one of them made it out because we never saw the girl make it out. We never saw her body. I think the guy died, if I remember correctly, but we never saw her die. And if I remember correctly, she was much more talented of a hacker than he was anyway, so they need her. Yeah. Uh, stared started as a drugstore with electronics. Yeah, exactly. There we go. So, if you like what you see here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to know when I'm be on live again next, you can hit the bell down below. You can also go to my website, suspendedfanimation.com, and take a look on my Facebook page. I have it up there as well. I also have a Facebook group page. You guys can come in and post stuff and talk amongst yourselves. I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Patreon page. I have all of that good stuff. Tomorrow I am off. Tuesday is It Worth My Time? And that is going to be Primal. That's a new Gennady Tartakovsky series. Wednesday I'm off. Thursday is Feelings in Hallways. That is where I talk about the the week's overview of the DC CW shows, or the CWDC shows, however you want to look at it. Friday is going to be Titans, season 2 of Titans, the latest episode, which is Bruce Wayne this week. And Saturday is Saturday Morning Blast Off, where I take the genre news of the week, talk about it, and any other genre stuff you guys want to talk about. There we go. And of course, Sunday we're coming back around to Mr. Robot again. And don't forget, right over here, this little guy right here, the very final episode, episode 13 of Mr. Robot, I will be giving him away. Yes, the mask right there, to one lucky person in the continental United States, because I, can't afford international shipping rates. So I still thought everyone was shot dead as a tornado, but I could be wrong. I want to say that she escaped, or I mean, they never showed her die. We saw him die, but I don't think we saw her die. That's what it was. Yeah, we saw his body, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I'm still shady on it because I remember it's been, God, it's been over 2 years now, so I don't remember too well, but we'll soon find out. All right. Thank you, everybody who joined me tonight in the chat. Thank you if you made it this far in the video. And like I said, I will see you on Tuesday for Is It Worth My Time? Until then, I'm going to let you guys go for the night to absorb this episode, because this episode was pretty damn good. And we got a lot of stuff coming up with this season, I'm pretty sure. Thank you. And I will see you next time. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Otherwise, someone may empty your safe deposit box because they didn't get the payment that was required. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.